welcome to my podcast, Home to Hear. My name is Tiyani and I am your hostess with the mostest, where I'll be talking to adult immigrants about their journey from home to here being wherever they might be in the world today. I am so interested in this topic because it is my own story. As I moved from home to Washington, D.C., which is where I'm located and based today. If you had asked me if I thought this was going to be my story about 5 or 6 years ago, I'd have told you, never gonna happen. I am not moving. But as circumstance and COVID would have it, life had a different path for me than what I would have thought for myself. So I want to talk to as many people to get these types of stories. And I look forward to you joining us on this journey as we unpack these incredible stories. But the first story that we must start with unpacking is mine. So I've got my questions here on my phone. I promise you, I am not checking out Twitter. Oh, X. I'm dialed in. As I said, I'm in Washington, D.C. That's the easy one. But where is home? Home for me is something that feels really complicated. It feels like such a low stakes coffee conversation type of question. Hey, so where are you from? That's like such an easy thing for people to ask. But for me, it's something that honestly causes so much anxiety because there's so many parts of me that I want to be able to represent and share, but I can't really do it effectively in what is expected to be a one phrase answer. But I have time today. I got time today, as Beyonce says. So, where is home for me? Let's take it back at least two generations. So, to my grandparents back in time. My grandfather was born in Mozambique. My grandmother was born in South Africa. They met in South Africa when my grandfather was working just like as a farmhand and my grandmother was a domestic employee. They met, they had their first three children in South Africa, and then they moved to Zimbabwe where they had the rest of their seven kids. So they had 10 kids in total. And my dad happens to be number four, so he was born in Zimbabwe. But before this, our family was not based in Zimbabwe. My grandfather was the first person to live there. And then my dad was the first in that lineage to be born there. So my dad was born in Zimbabwe, grew up there, went to school there, met my mom when they were in college. My mom is Zimbabwean too. I'll get to my mom's side of the story later. And then I was born in Zimbabwe. I lived there until I was 5, and then we moved to Botswana where we lived until I was 13. So I went to did my whole elementary school in Botswana. So I did all my primary school education in Botswana, then moved to Zimbabwe for my high school education. And then when I went to college, I went to college in South Africa. During that time, like the economic situation in Zimbabwe was just, it was up. It was all over the place from about 2001, like in that era. Then my dad decided to go and claim his South African citizenship through his direct descendant, who was his mother. And that's how I then got my South African citizenship. So, shout out to my grandmother. She's a real one. Then on my mom's side of the family, so my grandmother was born in what was then known as Rhodesia, so a British colony, which is now known as Zimbabwe. So she never has had Zimbabwean citizenship. She's always had British citizenship, which I'll get to in a second. Because when she remarried my step grandfather, he's a British citizen. Then my mother's biological father was from Zambia, and that's where my mom was born. So that Zambian heritage, which I've never really explored fully, if I'm completely honest, Mozambican heritage, again, which I've never fully explored. What I have explored and what I do own completely is my Zimbabwean heritage and my South African heritage. When people ask me, it's the quick answer I give is South Africa, and I'll explain why. It's not because I'm ashamed of like my Zim roots or all my family currently, like most of my family lives in Zimbabwe. Like just a few family members live like in the UK or in South Africa. Most of my family is in Zimbabwe. My grandparents are buried in Zimbabwe. My close family members are buried in Zimbabwe. So it's never something of not being proud of that. It's just that I haven't been an adult in that environment before. So I moved from when I was like 18 or 19 years old. And for the most part, I just did my high school education in Zim. So as things and the economy was going really bad, I couldn't like identify with those challenges because at that point I now had my South African citizenship and I was a South African citizen. So I didn't go through a lot of the things that my Zimbabwean friends were going through in terms of paperwork and visas and all of that stuff. And I became an adult in South Africa. It's where I pay taxes. It's where I voted for the first time. It's where I bought my first car. It's where I had so many of my first adult experiences. And it's where a lot of the opportunities that I've been able to access in terms of travel, education, scholarships have come through that. So it is not, I'm going to say like an obligation for me to then state that I'm South African citizen, but it makes sense to me. It feels natural to me. But there's still this tension where people in South Africa feel like I'm not South African enough because I wasn't born there. And then Zimbabwean people feel I'm not Zimbabwean enough because I don't identify with a lot of those challenges of the being living in South Africa and living through the xenophobia that a lot of my friends face and just all the visa issues. So they don't see me as being Zimbabwean enough, and South Africans don't see me as South African enough. So it's like, what am I supposed to do? And then having elements of having grown up in Botswana and then my grandparents with their varied heritage. So when people ask me, I just say, I'm from Southern Africa. I always ask them, okay, how much time do you have for me to answer this question? And I try and laugh it off. But honestly, it is something that is difficult for me to respond to in one word because I want to be true to all sides of me. But also, not everybody deserves to hear this 5 minute explanation. So, y'all got it today. And I hope that was something interesting for those who may not know me. And where do you think I'm from? I actually, when I give people like this spiel, I like to ask them, okay, so where do you think I'm from? And half the time they're just like, girl, you're from Africa. You're from Southern Africa. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. What brought me to the US? How did I get to Washington, D.C.? In South Africa, I was maybe just a bit more background about me. Professionally, I'm a lawyer, I'm qualified and trained in South Africa. I'm a lawyer by profession, it is not a hobby, but I recently did perform a career change. If you're really interested in learning more about my legal career, I have another podcast called Making the Shift with the Legal Work, where I talk about my own journey and also talk to a number of other female legal professionals about their own work lifestyle and journey. So just, I want to, what's the word? Plug that podcast here for those who may not have know about, the intricate parts of my career. So you can go look that up. Okay, so my career professionally, I'm a lawyer. I went into law because my parents are lawyers. That is not the reason why I went into law, but it was part of it. It was a big influence. My mom was a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer. I guess that's how it works. If your parents are lawyers, they both are. And I learned earlier this year that actually my maternal grandfather, my biological maternal grandfather, was also a lawyer. So I'm a third generation lawyer. Very proud of that little accomplishment. But I really went into law with the view of continue my parents' legacy, if I'm completely honest. My mom passed away tragically in 2001. At some point, I might get into that detail. And I just felt this, obligation to continue her legacy, to continue the work that was so important to her, because she had been such an amazing role model for me growing up. And I wanted to support my dad. But then I actually did the law thing, and I'm like, yeah, it's not giving. It's not giving what it's supposed to give. I literally remember like my first week in the law firm, I was like, this is it. I was like, nah, this is not for me. So I decided that I'm going to start my own something. And well, first of all, I worked for someone who was a pretty terrible boss. A lot of my career has had not such great bosses. My current bosses are amazing. So I had this not such a great boss, but he was like running a full on mining exploration company. And I'm like, this guy's not that smart and he can do this thing, which means if he can do it, I can do it. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed about coming to age in a place like South Africa, because a lot of the opportunities just felt so within reach for a girl like me. So I started my own legal consulting firm with my best friend. Hey, Zani, in 20. She absolutely hates it when I shout her out and stuff because she's now, how am I supposed to respond? But anyway, she'll be fine. So in 2015, we started our own legal consulting firm. We did that from 2015 to about 2019. And I just want to say that we were the first Black female owned legal consulting firm in South Africa. We have the receipts to prove it. We have the receipts to prove it. And now, like, legal consulting firms are just like normal. That's fine. We're glad that we did it for the kids. Anyway, so in 2019, like, I'd always been interested in tech and all things tech. And I was just really in complete transparency. I wanted to start a startup and just like retire at as soon as possible. And I kept listening to all these white American male podcasters talking about like their fundraising experiences and their startup experiences. I've listened to podcasts by Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, and he'd interview a bunch of these guys from Airbnb and Stripe and so forth. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. Then I found an opportunity at Cornell Law School. They were starting a new program. They had started a program, which was still fairly new. I think the program really started like in 2015, 2016, if not even sooner, like maybe 2018. They had started a new LLM. So LLM is a master's in law. And it was focused on law, technology, and entrepreneurship. And I was like, ding, ding, because your girl is not good at math. And I wanted to do an MBA, but like the GMAT and I, we're just not ever going to get along. We're not ever going to be in alignment because like those numbers and I, no. So when I saw this LM, I'm like, it has all the things. It has all the things. So I decided to apply for that LLM. I got in and I arrived in New York City on, I cannot remember the exact date, but I arrived in New York City in August of 2019. I remember the hardest goodbye for me was saying goodbye to my dad and my aunt and my very awesome, super close friend Lee and her husband and my friend Pam that took me to the airport. And I remember I had a middle seat, middle aisle, and I was surrounded by these musicians who were the Jamaican musician Chris Martin. So he had his band traveling with him, and they were had just done a gig in South Africa, and they were on their way to New York to do another gig. And I was just there weeping, like in between these like massive guys. And they were comforting me and just trying to support me and give me moral support and boost me. And they were just so awesome. If they're listening to this or they come across this, I just want to say thank you so much. Support Chris Martin's music, stream his music, and support the work that him and his band do. So it was an overnight flight. I arrived in New York City. I think it was a direct flight. Yeah, because I'm a direct flight girly. I don't want this business of going through 700 corners and stopping here and stopping there. No, I don't want to go there, here, there, and everywhere. I want to go where I'm going, baby. I want to get to my destination. I will sit in that flight for 16 to 18 hours. I don't mind. Because as what does Beyonce say? I got time today. So I think it was a direct flight. It was South African Airways. Shout out to South African Airways. Where you at? It was South African Airways from Johannesburg to New York. Got there, arrived at 8 a.m., went straight to campus because I decided to live on campus residence. And I got there, arrived in a room that was completely empty, no sheets, no toilet paper, no nothing. I had no phone service because I had just arrived, so I didn't have a SIM card. I called my one of my really good friends in Atlanta and I was asking her, please help me find like where do people buy toilet paper? Where do people buy sheets and bedding and towels? And in America, like I had no idea. That was the first thing I did was get off the flight and call her and I'm like, girl, where do I find toilet paper? Where do I find like sheets? And she asked me where I was and she Googled around and she found like a Bed Bath and Beyond close to me, a TJ Maxx close to me. And then she began to send me places where I can find all of the stuff. Again, I had no phone service. So I had to just go blind in technology terms. She sent me screenshots. She's like, okay, this is where you get, because I was using Wi Fi at Starbucks. Shout out to Starbucks for the free Wi Fi. And she's like, okay, get off at this station and then walk in this direction. I did that. I went to the subway. I think it was one stop or two stops. I got off and I'm like looking so lost. And I found this guy. I was just looking at people like who looks like they're not going to unalive me and just ask, yo, bro. Okay, I did not say yo, bro. Hi, can you please help me? Like, I am trying to get situated. I'm looking for this address. And this man was so nice. He actually walked with me to the shop and he left me there. And I was able to get the things I needed. And I took an Uber back because I had so much stuff. I bought duvet, everything that I need. But I will never forget that arriving in America moment. But this was not my first time in the US. So it was not my first time in New York. Let's rewind. I had a bit of trauma about New York because the first time I went to New York was in 2012, and that was in winter. Me and my friend, my bestie, we arrived in New York in the first week of December. I was excited. When you touch down on the plane, you're listening to Alicia Keys and Jay-Z, and they're like hyping you up. So we landed there. And then we had found this like accommodation on Airbnb. At that point, Airbnb was still like new and cool. And like try and negotiate like a side deal for the accommodation with the person who owns the apartment. So we asked her, like, can we talk to you on the side in the corner? And she's cool, yeah, you guys can just pay me through Western Union. That should have been the first red flag. Why are you paying through Western Union? She just pay me half the amount now, and then you'll pay the other half like when you arrive. So we tossed it over to Western Union. We paid half the amount. Then on the day we land in New York City, and then we got a cab. We went to the address that we had been given. We arrive, and I will remember there was this guy who was walking his dog outside. And we asked, hey, we're looking for this address. He's, I have lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. I've never heard of that address before. Bro, it is my first time in America. I have two big bags and no African style. I am freezing. I've never experienced that level of like cold before. I don't have a lot of money. The exchange rate was not in my favor. And I'd really we'd spent a good amount on this accommodation. And now it's like it does not exist. There was a lot of scrambling, a lot of panic. And from that point, I just felt, oh, I don't like New York. It's full of scammers. It's dirty. It's all the things that I'm just like not into. But that, what eventually became 2 years living in New York, honestly is one of the most magical chapters of my life. Because visiting a place and living in a place are very different. I remember I took the bus from Roosevelt Island, where I was living, all the way to like Flushing. I wanted to go to a Rite Aid because I remember I had watched Issa Rae in Insecure, and there was this episode where she's in the Rite Aid arguing with Lawrence, and I'm like, oh, Rite Aid, it seems like a shop for cheap things. Let me go there. So I literally, when I arrived in New York, I was like, where's the Rite Aid? And I found one. So that first week was really just getting my apartment set up, getting my banking stuff set up, getting a phone, and all of those things. And to me, it was wild, and it still is, how advanced the banking systems in South Africa are. Not that it's, come on, naturally, like we do good things there. But like in the US, you'd imagine that they're using checks here. They use checks, check, not Mike check 1 2 1 2. So yeah, I remember like one of the things that I didn't understand how checks work. So when I was in grad school and then I was on this medical aid, and I had gone to the doctor to go into a bunch of just medical stuff. Like when you move to the US, they want to make sure that you literally don't even have, I don't know, like a pimple. They want to check every like aspect of your medical history, and they ask you to get 700 shots. So I had done all of those things, and now my doctor was sending me the bill. And then I'm like, I'm on the medical aid. Like, why is the medical aid not paying? And medical aid kept sending me these papers. I'm like, what is this paper? I'd open it and it's, what is this? Come to find out, those were checks that I was supposed to be sending to the doctor's office to offset the bills that I was getting. I thought that they were sending them to me just like, we have paid this to the doctor. No, I was supposed to send those checks. I had never seen a check before. So you know what I would do to them? I would throw them in the trash because I had no idea. No one told me that they use checks here. I was not prepared for a world of checks. Yeah, don't be like me. Don't throw your checks away. So that was like probably a story that I wish someone had actually taught me how those things work. So that is something that I wish that I had. Again, because the US is so widely portrayed on media, on television, and a lot of US culture has, for better or for worse, permeated and infiltrated African societies. So I visited the US before, so I had an idea of what to expect. But living here, as I explained, my Czech story was not the same as like visiting. So there are like those things which are different. In South Africa, I had a car. So I could dress differently. Honestly, my fashion sense did change moving to the US because now I have to use public transport. So I'm not able to dress the way that I used to dress with like heels all the time and that type of thing because I don't have that like ease of convenience of a vehicle. On the flip side, like a lot of the cities that I've lived in so far in New York and DC are super walkable. It is not advisable to walk in Johannesburg as a woman on your own. I mean, I know lots of people that do, but if you have a choice, most people choose not to walk in Johannesburg just because of safety concerns. It was interesting being able to experience physical safety as part of my commute. So that's something that I really enjoy now being able to take the train. I don't have a car payment. I don't have to pay insurance. I don't have to worry about parking. And now I'm like leaning into those advantages. But at the same time, it has changed my style, and style is something that's very important to me. And also just being here, seeing how different Americans dress from other societies. It's been a learning experience. I'll just leave it at that. So I moved to New York 2019. The plan was that I will do my master's, graduate in May, and then maybe do 1 year working. Because when you study in the US, you get this thing called OPT, optional practical training, where you get to work in the field that you were studying, and then you can go back home or you try and find a full time offer. I did not think I wanted to get a full time offer. I just wanted to, because I had my own business. I left a business in Johannesburg, and I also was on a scholarship. I'm not going to incriminate myself. I'll just leave it there. So I wanted to go back and I also needed to go back. So I school started August 2019. And then what happened in January of 2020? COVID stories start coming out here and there. I remember when the first case of COVID was reported in New York City. I remember like the gridlock, the just the sheer sense of panic that everybody felt. And like within 3 days, campus had shut down completely. We were all in our rooms, all now virtual learning. So that experience, and I had to make a decision at that time. Do I want to go back home to Johannesburg or do I want to stay in the US? I decided to stay in the US because I felt like I've made an investment in being here. And as much as I had a business in South Africa, I had been away for so long that it wasn't going to be practical for me to move back home at that point being May 2020 after graduation. In fact, there were opportunities to leave earlier. I just thought I had committed to being here to finish my degree. Who was I going to go back to in Johannesburg? Who was going to want to take in someone who's coming from New York City, where there's the highest severity of COVID in the world. And they're just gonna open their home to you. I was like, nah, fam, ain't no one, no matter how much they love you, gonna take you in. So just relax, just stay where you are, stay the course. And I decided to do that. But that was good to make that decision. But from economic and financial standpoint, it was very hard because a lot of jobs were being rescinded. A lot of my friends that had received offers, a lot of from like Amazon and Meta and Apple, a lot of those offers were being rescinded or frozen. And then I'm here on a visa trying to, and also like a low degree. If you don't have a JD or if you're not barred, it's really hard for you to find the right opportunities. The opportunities, not that they're non existent, but they're very limited. So, not having either one of those things at that exact time, my options were I didn't have many options, or at least that's how I felt. I decided to do the thing that I'm really good at doing, which is making the most of a bad situation. But I'm trying to move my mindset from surviving to thriving. And that's something that I feel being the US is helping me to do, to see that I don't always need to focus on surviving, that there is space and I am deserving of thriving. I think sometimes when you come from economies or situations where it looks like opportunities are limited and that very few people are able to get ahead, that you also end up with a scarcity mentality. So I'm really trying to reframe my mindset to be more abundance focused, not woo abundance focused, but just believing in the goodness and the quality of the work that I can do and produce, and know that there'll always be something available for me to do, to learn from, and contribute to. So there's your meditation for the day. But I decided to start a startup. All that to say, I decided to start a startup. So it was connecting early stage founders to small law firms. So it was really a legal services marketplace. And if anyone ever wants to do a marketplace, please talk to me so I can discourage you. Yeah. Okay. So we did that for just about a year. And in that time, it was highs and lows. I learned so much. I met so many incredible people, so many incredible founders, really good quality investors, people that are really trying to make a difference. Because all of these things happened during the period of the murder of George Floyd. That's when a lot of these opportunities, at least what looked like opportunities, started coming along and made this feel like it was the right thing to do. And in hindsight, it really was the right thing to do. It's just unfortunate where we are now, looking, back in hindsight again, that it's really unfortunate that a lot of these commitments really just came to nothing. But what did not come to nothing was my ability to pivot my career. And I found an opportunity in Washington, D.C. with an international company. And that's where I moved in September of 2021. And I've been in DC since. So that's been my journey and my experience to moving to DC. One of the things that I have enjoyed about being in the US, at least like from a professional standpoint, is how open people are to sharing opportunities and resources and not gatekeeping their contacts. Because sometimes, like back home, it wasn't something that people were super open about, especially like if they don't know you, if you're not immediately in their circle, they were very much like guarded about their people. Whereas here, that's really not the situation. You can literally hit someone up on LinkedIn, and if they can make time, meet you for a coffee, it's 20 minutes out of their schedule. They're willing to spend that if they think that what you're doing is something interesting, and that also that they can add value to you. Now I'm gonna stop for a water sip. So this is my Carol Boyers cup. So Carol Boyers is a South African designer, and she designs cookware. She passed away, so rest in peace, Carol Boyers. But this is some of her beautiful work. She did a lot of like abstract art in her the stuff that she designed. So I just wanted to shout her out. And yeah, if you have cool cups, send them to me. I actually don't have a set of cups. That's something that is so weird. When I moved to the US, oh, let me actually take a sip. Hold on. Because when I moved to the US, I didn't have a state of permanence about like me being here long term. A lot of things that I did were just like things that I needed to do in order for me to just take the next step. So, for example, I didn't have an iron for the longest time. I literally bought an iron this year. Do not judge me. Because I used to have just this baby travel steamer. I'm not going to be here for long. Like, why must I invest in an iron? Invest in an iron. I know if there's someone from Nigeria listening to me right now, they're just like mortified that how is this girl surviving? It was just small things like that. So I do not small things like that. So I don't have a complete set of mugs or like a complete set of glasses. I just have, oh, I got this mug from some free event. Because again, I was really just facing things here without having a state of permanence. And maybe that's the next thing that we should talk. I want to talk about just as I'm like starting to wind down. What are my next steps? What am I thinking and feeling about doing next, and where do I want to be? And now and in the long term, that's something that I've absolutely struggled with. It is probably consistently the most difficult thing. After answering the question, where are you from? Is where do you want to live? Where do you want to be? There's so many things about America that I do enjoy. I think my top things are like a boneless chicken thighs. Yes, guys, boneless chicken thighs. They're good. I highly recommend. Chick-fil-A. Those are the things that keep me locked into this place. And Amazon Prime. I wish I wasn't like giving money to Jeff Bezos, but like Prime, I don't know if I can go back to life without Prime. I really love to be African. I love being from South Africa. I love being South African. And then the question often comes up, okay, so when do you want to go back home? The answer is like any day. Today's a good day. Tomorrow's also a good day. Soon. But in that same breath, there are things and opportunities that I feel I can properly and fully pursue here because capitalism really reigns in America in a way that it's not available in South Africa, or I guess like encouraged, or is you in South Africa. That's part of the reason why I did this. And I think what I'm about to say could land me in a bit of hot water, but we'll cool it down. We'll cool it down. So I felt there was a seething that was coming down on us in South Africa where if you want your business to be able to succeed, you need to have a political connection, a white person in your business, or you are willing to pay bribes. So you are politically connected, you have a white person in your business, or you're willing to pay bribes. And I know there are people who definitely succeed without any of those things. And I really hate to feel like those people are the exception, but the rule is in there. Someone who has like a thriving business, just look under the hood. See if it's good in the hood. Just that's my observation. This is like a personal survey. It's not, there's no McKinsey report on this. It's me, my opinion. Whereas I'm not saying that's not the same thing in the US. And then also in South Africa, I really feel that what I learned being here so far is that America really, in a certain way, and in some very specific groups, which is like really like the model minority, people that fall within that like model minority viewpoint or that model minority community where you can succeed in access that are available if you fall within a very tight little demographic band. Whereas in South Africa, so let me give a practical example. So during that time of the George Floyd protest, there was a big call for just black founders. They didn't care if you were black American, as long as you're in America on like valid documentation. For the most part, they didn't even care if your documents were valid or legal, if your status was legal. They just said be black, and then you can access a world of opportunities, real or perceived, endless money, again, real or perceived. You were eligible. Like there were other blocks that like counted you out before it was like your nationality. Whereas in South Africa, we have a very, which is good, but it can also be limiting, very strong focus on that opportunities are only for South African citizens. And sometimes I don't even qualify for those opportunities when people see that I was not born in South Africa. So it can feel a little bit limiting being in South Africa to access certain opportunities. And the US has done a really good job of welcoming again they only welcome certain types of immigrants, as we've seen in the news and when there's migrant crises happening in poorer countries, that this is not the most welcoming environment. But if you are a person of color, you went to an Ivy, you went to you are in like an alphabet, one of these like alphabet soup companies, 3-letter acronym companies, then there's a world of opportunities for you that kind of opens up. So I don't want to say, oh, opportunities are available for immigrants. It's very nuanced. But from that sliver of immigrants, then they're able to have this very good, juicy, lucrative, taxable base for themselves, which in South Africa we miss out on because we keep the good opportunities behind the velvet rope of South African citizenship. Whereas I really think we could 10x our economy by opening that up. And I know that's going to be quite controversial. I don't know. Don't fight me. I can't fight. But Zani can, my best friend, she can fight. She can beat all of you. And then, yeah, so in terms of like my next steps, I want to go back home. That's something that I always make abundantly clear. When I say go back home, to me, I want to go back to the African continent. What this experience has taught me, which I shared with my dad when I met with him when I went home, I try to go home every year. I go home every year, just like once a year. I try and spend a month back home. So I met up with my dad when I was home, yeah, like in August this year. And he was asking me what I've learned about this experience and what I want to do next. What's next for me in future? I was like, I don't know what I want to do next in definite terms. But what this experience has taught me is that I belong everywhere in the world, that there's a space and a place for me anywhere in the world that I decide to be. And my dad is, that's a very important thing to know and to be aware of at this stage of your life. So for me, when I say I want to go back home, I really mean go back home to the continent, not like in some the continent type of way, but I have like specific places that I would actually like to go back and specific projects that I want to implement and specific things that I want to achieve. So it doesn't feel so high in the sky, but it's very gathered. So places I would love to either live is Ghana, Accra, Johannesburg, obviously. And there's a thing in me that I would love to live in Mozambique. I love Maputo. If someone would teach me Portuguese, fala português, I would move to Maputo. I absolutely just love the idea of living in Maputo. Completely unbiased, just like an unhinged thought, but I love it. It makes me happy. Now I'm going to give myself my rapid fire questions. Home or here? For me, home. Always home. Favorite food back home. My favorite food back home is chicken licken. It's so many things, but like the thing I miss when I get off the plane and I want to see and eat first is just like those chicken licken wings. That's it. That's like the first stop I want to make. That's how I know. Favorite snack here. My favorite snack in the US. Oh, it's actually something that's healthy. Ooh, it's the Skinny Girl popcorn. Like the Skinny Girl popcorn, the plain one. I'm a plain popcorn girl. Like I do not like butter, whatever, all of these weird things people put in their popcorn. If you want to have all that stuff, just have something else, have crisps. If someone has never heard a song from my home country, what song and would I tell them to listen to? What song and artist? I'm going to take advantage of this being a two country girly. I would choose one, all of them Tukudzi. And the song I would select would be Kunze Kwadoka, which is like, it was a little party song. It's go where you been. Like it's getting dark outside. Come back home. Leave the streets. So that would be like my number one song. It's vibey, it's fun. Then the second song I would pick coming from South Africa would be a song by Brenda Fassie. I would select Weekend Special. Weekend Special is it's that song. It's you sing along, it's vibey, it's got attitude. I would definitely pick Weekend Special, but it's really hard because I love Vulindlela. And to me, if you're getting married, your wedding has not begun until you play Vulindlela. I don't care. We're just all meeting here and you're wearing a white dress. But until you play that song, your wedding has not begun. Next question. Favorite memory from home. My favorite memory from home would have to be any time I spent with my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in June of 2022. So any time that I spent with him, honestly, is my favorite memory. Him and I, whenever we would meet, we would just look at each other and just like erupt in laughter and smiles. He spoke little to no English or like Ndebele, which is what I speak, Ndebele slash Zulu. And I speak like little to no Tsonga because that's like my mother tongue is Tsonga, technically, but I don't speak any. But somehow we always found ways to communicate. But if it has to be like one specific memory, honestly, it's just any time that I was with him and we're just like sitting in the sun, just talking about nothing, but just being in each other's presence, just really just holding his hand and listening to his stories that I most of the time did not understand. Weirdest thing about being in America. Oh, there's so many. The weirdest thing about being in America, let me try and localize it. The weirdest thing about being in DC. I think probably, yeah, just like, I think people will be really surprised that like just the amount of rats that exist in this country or like in these like big metropolitan cities. Like for us, like seeing a rat is in back home is a little bit, like it's not something that's so common, but here, like it's part of you, like you could literally see one almost every day. So I would say that, yeah, maybe that something weird. Something new I learned about myself here. I think it's like, discuss that earlier, moving from like surviving to thriving and really trying to lean into that as I get older. And just giving myself a lot more grace. I think one of the things I was really hell bent like on that girl boss lifestyle when I was in Johannesburg, either because like I needed it for as my identity, or like I had to, like, again, that survive to thrive thing, you had to survive. So coming here, learning about mental health and taking some of those things more seriously, and that is not something that is frowned upon here. I think it's becoming more commonplace back home. But I think being here really gave me a space to explore some of those things and ways to look after myself in that way. Something I'm holding on to about myself from home, definitely my friendships. My friendships have held me up here. They've held me up in when I was home. So my friendships, my relationships are a key centerpiece to all of this. And also, I do my best to stay plugged into what's going on politically. Okay, through Twitter. That's it. And trying to and talking to family and friends, trying to get a honest perspective of what's going on. So really staying plugged into their lives and what they're facing on a day-to-day basis, and trying to watch as much local TV as I can. Like I found a way to bootleg DSTV Show Max. I should not be saying a lot of these things, but yeah. So I sometimes watch DSTV to watch like local shows, especially in vernacular, because yeah, like I speak English all the time now. I spoke English a lot back home, but like now I don't have a choice. So I really have to, I try my best to watch a lot of Zulu and shows without like subtitles, just so I kind of like stay in the know, if that makes sense. Has home become here? No, home has not become here. It is a version of my apartment. I love my apartment. There are certain spaces that feel homely and that I invest in making to feel homely. So I'm investing a lot in my relationships here so that I have that golden thread of friendship, whether I'm home or I'm here, being able to invest in certain things in my space that make me feel like I'm home, even though I'm here. So it's certain things, so it's relationships and just some spaces and cultivating community, whether it's book clubs or going to the gym or whatever it might be, just finding those spaces where I feel a sense of safety. Lastly, do I feel that I belong here? Like I said, when I spoke to my dad, I feel that I belong everywhere. And I'm so grateful that I do feel like I belong here. As much as I find many things weird and I do like to complain about it, and I do want to go back home. But in this season, I really do feel like I belong here and that I have something to contribute here. I've written a children's book called My Favorite Color. Really, I want to keep exploring, whether it's through this channel, through this medium, or through other forms of storytelling, that immigrant experience, the story of immigrants. So my children's book really looks at a child that's growing up in a mixed heritage home. So the father is South African and the mom is African American. So it's a South African American family, and just the dynamics of what they go through as a family, things that you are relatable to for people back home, and then also stories that are relatable here as well. So really trying to keep again that golden thread going between the two places. So yes, I do feel that I belong here, but I'm also looking forward to coming back home. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Home to Here. It's been wonderful talking to you and sharing this story. I look forward to any comments or questions that you have. And if you would like to be a guest on this next episode of Home to Here, please let me know. Sign up below. All the things will be available to you. If you have questions from today's episode, share that in the comments below and rate this podcast 5 and share with as many people as even the ones you don't know. This can be like how you slide in someone's DM, just send them the podcast. Thank you so much and have an amazing day. I like the way this girl ends her podcast. She ends her TikTok post. She ends it with, have the day that you deserve. Bye. Hi, guys. I'm back to redo a section of the podcast that I recorded yesterday because rats are weird, especially in a country like that uh, classifies itself as a first world country. To just have them so prevalent everywhere, that is kind of weird. But there are weirder things about being in America than rats. I think for me, one of the things, so many food examples, but one of the things that was like, and is still a bit weird to me, is that it's only beef can be a burger. Do you get it? Only beef can be a burger. There's no such thing in this place as a chicken burger. I think I've been in a place where they had like a salmon burger, like a fish burger, something like they had salmon inside the burger. I think our rule in South Africa is that if the meat, it's the bun that determines the name of the item, like the bun. So for us, we use burger, hamburger rolls, and anything that's inside a hamburger roll automatically becomes a burger. You get it? Whereas here, only beef is a burger. So if you go to a place like Chick fil A and you ask for a chicken burger, they're going to look at you like you have two heads because they have chicken sandwiches. For us, sandwiches, if it's inside bread, it's now become a sandwich. Anything between two slices of bread is a sandwich. Anything in a burger bun is a burger. That is my cardinal rule. But here, no bueno, it's not the same. So I would say that is something that is quite weird for me. It was an adjustment for me. So yes, I came back to re-record this segment just for us to talk about burgers, bread, burgers and bread as being something that I had to get used to. But overall, I do want to do a segment called Very American Things where I just discussed like a bunch of things that are very American. So I'm going to do my best to make observations over the next couple of weeks, and then it will be something quick and fun that I will like insert into an episode or put on my social media as something funny. So, and if you've experienced the very American thing, let me know. I want to hear about it. Bye, guys. Have a good day. No, no, no. What do we say? Have the day that you prefer.